UK Council, etc. He is also a member of the advisory committee of the proposed Mumbai University School of Economics and Public Policy. He is also associated with several NGOs and educational institutions. His quotes and writings have been published in various newspapers, magazines, and journals in India and abroad. With these words and such a very impressive career, I would now invite Shri Ashish Kumar Chauhan to deliver Dr. L.C. Gupta Memorial Lecture on the evolution of Indian capital market, past, present, and future. Please join me in welcoming Shri Ashish K. Chauhan. Thank you.
Shri Amarjit Singh, Dr. D.B. Gupta, Dr. Kalpana Gupta, Shri Indra Chaurasia, Dr. P.C. Jain. Friends, it's a pleasure and honor to be in front of you, speaking at this first L.C. Gupta Memorial Lecture. I think it's apt that we celebrate the lives and thoughts of our great souls. And I consider Dr. Gupta as a giant amongst the capital market thinkers in last 50 years in India. I think in some ways, both the speakers before me said that he was a visionary. The issue, even among thinkers, is that we are the prisoners of our past. We are prisoners of the society we are born in. All our thoughts, all our ideas are based on things which we experience, things which we read. Very few of us are able to think something which is not based on our experiences. And I think Dr. L.C. Gupta was one such person who never traded derivatives before in his life, who had not thought about derivatives, who had not seen anyone trading derivatives. But he could lead a full 20-member committee, which was made of giants. Some of them are becoming giants now, like Uday Kotak or Vallabh Bansali. But 20 people included some of the best names of those times. And he could lead them with ease. He could lead them with authority, because an academic usually is not having that confidence vis-a-vis the market participants who are having a lot of resources at their command. His own experiences, his own way of dealing with people, I think took him through, and his report, which is considered or known as L.C. Gupta Committee report, after almost 25 years of its submission, continues to be the guide for all the regulators, all exchanges, about not only the derivatives, but how to structure the capital markets in this country. And in some ways, India has become pretty much amongst the top countries in the world in organizing the capital markets, is because of the giants like Dr. L.C. Gupta, who came, who thought about things without even knowing how that will come about, but they had that vision in their minds. That vision, when it got fulfilled, newer visions came, and they were so good that, as Amarjit Singh said, that even in 2018-19 we were implementing his recommendations, and that tells you about the longevity of his ideas and the execution which the entire society has been following, and the benefit has been immense. In some ways, he had some experience of capital markets reforms. He was part of the G.B. Patel committee initially, where again some of the stalwarts of those times, almost 15-20 years before the L.C. Gupta committee came in, the G.B. Patel committee report was also on reforms of Indian capital markets. In Indian capital markets were set up officially in 1875 by setting up Native Share and Stockbroker Association, which is now known as BSE or Bombay Stock Exchange. But the initiation of markets the financial markets in India happened in Calcutta in 1820s. The bank bonds started getting traded. And so Indian markets are very old. And literally every 10 to 15 years, there would be a committee set up. I'm privy to the committees which were set up in 1896, 1910, 1930s, 1940s, 1960s, 1980s, and so on and so forth. And so each time, Indian market had to be reformed because newer things would happen, newer scandals will arise, and that's how newer committees would be set up. But last 30 years have changed the way the world works, the way the India works, and a single country came into existence in many ways because of automation of stock exchanges. I'll take up that. If you look back around 90s, we had been a socialist republic of India. The stock markets were a bad idea. It was a satta bazaar. If you recall Saigal, there was a movie called Satta Bazaar. We became independent and we wanted to become a socialist republic, although we changed our constitution only in 1976, but in all thoughts and deed, we were a socialist republic. We were going into planning process. The markets had no role to play. Markets were a nuisance which will be tolerated in a modern India because we could not close them down because they were existing before, and that's why we had to actually keep them on, but on a leash. And that's where the India from 1947, post-independence, till 1991 worked. The banks were supposed to provide all the capital that was required by the Indian industry, create those great jobs, and get all the good things that happen to industrialized societies. And that was what our founding fathers thought about. It did not work out the way we thought. We had Mahala Nabi's plans, planning commission was set up, first 5-year plan, second 5-year plan. We went on creating plans, but as usual, our execution was lacking. Our understanding of humans, what motivates them, what actually gets the society to work together, was still forming in early stage. We would not have done anything different post 1990s, except that the world was changing. Why I want to give you this background is that a new framework of organizing things, creating information, talking about information was coming up in the form of new computers which were coming up. But more importantly, the ideas of socialism were slowly going out of vogue. Russia, which was actually the mother of that idea, or at least the executor of that idea, after Karl Marx, most of the thinking, most of the execution happened in Russia. It was actually collapsing without anyone knowing. There was, in early 90s, we had breakdown of Berlin Wall. The communism was at the end. USSR got broken down. Afghanistan also came out of the clutches of Russia. Why I'm giving you this background is that early 90s were tumultuous time, not only for India, but for the world. And we were still smug in our great independence we achieved, and after that, nothing much. And that's where, basically in 1991, we got a jolt. We did not have the foreign exchange for even 15 days of imports, and we had to actually give up our gold. People could see the photographs of vans coming out of RBI, and our gold was being transported abroad. And that was basically the time to give up that ego and start liberalizing. We were a license Raj framework. Many of you who are young would only think about it or would hear about it. But it was a very difficult period for doing any type of enterprise in India. And post 91, under duress, we had to reform. We can always take pride in our reforms now, because in retrospect, we are all wiser. But those days were very difficult for most of us to think about, to think that how our great ideas did not work out. And in that context, that new computers were coming, we were being forced, and suddenly the market started going up. It was basically being thought that earlier we were going from a socialist allocation of funds from now market-oriented allocation of funds. We were becoming a capitalist economy from socialist economy, from IMF and World Bank tutelage. And that was our way of thinking. It was not so be, because after a couple of years, probably a year or so, we realized that the markets were not going up because we were doing reforms, but they were going up because somebody called Harshad Mehta was taking money from RBI and investing it in stocks, and that's why prices were going up. So all our dreams of creating New India suddenly collapsed. And our thinkers, our reformers of those days, who later ended up becoming even bigger and ended up doing greater things. But in those days, it was a great setback to thinking of reforms. And in that sort of context, in 1992, after Harshad Mehta scam came to light, we thought of completely revamping our capital markets by looking at the rest of the world and even charting course which was non-existent at that time anywhere in the world. And IDBI, which was the largest financial institution in those days, was told to set up a team to think of setting up a national stock exchange which will act actually